Hello, Taco Joshi and the Anime Curious. My name is RandomSama613 and welcome to Anime Opinions. This is going to be my first impression of the season, and it's of a series that isn't even out yet. As you're probably well aware, I was at Anime Expo this last weekend or so, and I had the opportunity to see the brand new Shinichiro Watanabe series, the first 2 episodes, and that is the series Terror in Resonance, and I'm going to tell you what I thought of it. First off, I'm going to say that this will be as spoiler-free as physically possible, which means I'm not going to talk about the plot basically at all, because anything I talk about from the plot is a spoiler. It's almost impossible to talk about what happened in the show without spoiling something, and I don't want to spoil anything for it because this series is well worth the wait. So the first thing I wanted to mention about this series is that it's being done by a brand new studio, Studio Mappa, and they haven't done anything before. And I'm going to say they did a very excellent job with the animation. It's being directed by, like I said, Shinichiro Watanabe of Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Flamenco, and many other fantastic series. And I'm extremely excited to see more of this. The soundtrack is being done by Yoko Kanno, also who has done Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, and many other fantastic soundtracks. So this is definitely going to be a series to watch if you weren't already planning on watching it. But going right in, one of the first things that you notice about the series obviously is its animation, and it's a very clean animation style. It took a second to get used to some of the way that things were drawn, such as like the lips. That kind of bothered me for a little while, but after a while, that doesn't bug you anymore, and I see it as kind of a realistic style of drawing. They don't have really wild, crazy hairdos for the most part. They don't have strange colors everywhere. It feels very realistic, and that really helps to draw you into the series. I'd say that the characters are drawn, and everything else is drawn with relatively heavy lines. Like, you can see in some of the resting positions, you can see all the folds that have been outlined in people's shirts, stuff like that. And I really happen to like that style, so it looked just fantastic. One of the other things is the animation for, like, chase sequences and all the action sequences look really fluid, they look really good, and just, it looks fantastic. That's basically what this all boils down to, is the series looks really good. The backgrounds are also really nice looking, they're varied. They go everywhere from cityscapes to they do some forest, they have some tundra, they have ice, they have snow, they have water, they have a little bit of everything. And it really lends itself to keeping the series interesting. There are a ton of varied backgrounds. One of the big things I noticed also is that there's a relatively high contrast, meaning that a lot of the characters seem like they're extremely pale. Almost like ethereal would be the quality I'd go for. And this is mostly portrayed upon the characters 9 and 12 for the most part, but Lisa as well. And I'll talk about the characters more later, but it kind of gives them a more ethereal presence, and it kind of changes how you view them as opposed to the other characters who tend to look more fleshed, like they actually like they're real, would be kind of the way I'd put it. It's hard to describe exactly. And the use of color overall is actually very good. I will say for the downsides, there were some minor animation issues when I watched the series. There were a couple scenes where people had forgotten to do hair color, stuff like that, like little tiny things that I think will either get fixed before the broadcast, because I mostly noticed these in the second episode, which had been rushed out so that the viewers could see it. And I think these will be fixed prior to broadcast, or they'll be fixed in a Blu-ray release, which either way, I'll be very happy with it. And they don't really break immersion per se, I just happen to notice them, and it's something I wanted to mention. The next thing I want to talk about, of course, is the soundtrack and the sound effects. The soundtrack is composed by Yoko Kanno, like I said, and my primary note here says, "Oh my fucking god, Yoko Kanno." And that's really all I need to say about the soundtrack, because it is standard Yoko Kanno fare, and I am completely okay with that. It sounds fantastic. It really draws you into the series. I'd say the OP is one of the best OPs I've heard in a very long time. And as I said earlier, it's very Yoko Kanno. It starts very slow, it does kind of a build-up, and it just draws you in the longer it plays. And it really gets you hyped to watch the series. If you want to hear some of the OP, if you watch the second preview at about 37 seconds on the Noah Damina channel on YouTube, you can hear some of it, and that's the OP. And it is hauntingly beautiful. It's great. It's so good. I'd also say that the background music is really good. It helps to draw you in and really get you to feel that tension that the series wants you to feel. And it really helps you to just become fully immersed in the series, which is fantastic. And I absolutely love every second of the OST. It's all good music. I'd also say that the use of sound effects was really good. I'd say that the explosion sound effects and There's another accompanying sound that I don't want to mention because it's a spoiler, but it all sounds really good. The water splash sound effects sound great, the sound of people walking sounds good, just the background noise and buzz of the city sounds great, and just like I've said before, this helps to keep you immersed in the series. And these episodes, they may be 24 minutes long, but they go by really fast. They feel really, really long, but they go by so quickly because there's just so much going on and it just draws you in so well. Next thing I'm going to mention and talk about is the characters. These are really the meat of this series, and there's really only 3 or 4 main characters that have been introduced so far. So starting off, you have 9 and 12, who are the terrorists, basically. And you don't really know much about them. 9 is more of a cool and reserved character. He tries not to be noticed. I think the best way to describe him is he's just, like I've said, he's just cold and reserved and very calculating. And this is in direct contrast to 12, who's very bubbly. And I'd really describe him kind of like a terrorist Nagisa. Nagisa being from Free. I'd really describe him that way because he's really light and bubbly and childlike and really joyful. But at the same time, he's also very calculating. And he has an eidetic memory, I believe, which makes him all much scarier. And he delivers threats to kill people with a smile on his face and a sparkle in his eye, and it's really kind of unnerving. And it makes him an interesting character, as opposed to 9, who is still an interesting character. It's just that he's the direct opposite of 12, and they really play off of each other really, really well. The other character kind of worth mentioning is Lisa. She's a female high school student who is being bullied. She is having home problems, and she's kind of unwittingly drawn into the plot that 9 and 12 are executing. And she's unwittingly made into an accomplice through a series of events. And, well, sort of unwittingly, because she's given the choice of she can either die or become an accomplice. And she chooses to help them, basically. But she has a lot of internal struggle, and she's an interesting character, and I think that she's going to add a different twist to the series than just following 9 and 12, because she's an outsider. She's not part of their plot for the most part. I think she's going to be interesting to follow her. And that'll be definitely fascinating to watch how she kind of evolves throughout the series as well. And then the last person I want to mention is there's a former detective named Shibasaki. And I think he's going to be important as well. You don't know much about him. You don't know why he's a former detective. You don't know what went down. And you find out a little bit more about him, but not a ton, so I just want to mention him briefly because he seems to be very important. And one big thing I want to mention overall about all the characters is they have backgrounds that are talked about and teased, but they don't really talk about what happened yet. And it leaves a lot of intrigue and a lot of mystery to the characters, but it gives them depth, and I think this is going to be a fantastic thing to have explored, even if it's just a little bit. And I think it'll reveal the motivations behind 9 and 12's actions. So, I'm looking forward to that. Lastly, I'm just going to briefly mention the plot. I'm not going to talk about any specifics because everything that I could possibly talk about will be a massive spoiler, I'm sure. So, I'm just going to mention basically what the plot is. The plot is that a terrorist group known as Sphinx, which is composed of 9 and 12, they release an internet video that's very cryptic, doesn't seem to mean anything, and then they commit a terrorist attack on Tokyo. And they're trying to, quote-unquote, wake up the population to something, but we don't know what. And the police are trying to catch them, and that's the basic plot of the series. And I can't really go into it much more than that because, like I said, it'll spoil something. And there's just everything associated with this series is going to be massively spoilerific because there's just so much integral to the plot that's going on, I'm assuming. So I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be probably my favorite series of the season, hands down. So these are my first impressions of Zankyou no Terror, or Terror in Resonance. Go ahead and leave your comments down below about what you guys think of the first episode once it airs. It will be airing on Funimation's site exclusively, which is going to be at Funimation.com. It's going to be premiering, I believe the first episode comes out at noon CST on Friday the 11th, July 11th. And I'm greatly looking forward to it. I'll be watching the first 2 episodes again because I can't wait for the 3rd episode. I have to wait 3 weeks for the 3rd episode, and it's going to kill me because every episode ends on a cliffhanger that draws you into it more. And I have no words to describe how hyped I am for this series. It is just that good. But go ahead and leave your comments down below once you do watch this series. If you like the video, go ahead and throw me a like. It really does help me out. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and throw me a dislike. But until next time, I've been RandomSama613. This has been Anime Opinions. And until then, watch more anime.